Hello, hello, hello. Happy New Year's from Kindred Skulls. My name is Greg Blake. I am one of the co-hosts of this show, and I'm joined this morning with my lovely and talented and brilliant co-host, Matt Fries. How are you this morning, Matt?
Well, that's a bit aggressive for an intro right there, but I'll take it, Greg. I got no complaints about that one.
Excellent.
Doing well this morning, doing well. Yeah. Happy New Year's, everybody.
Happy New Year's.
We're recording Friday morning, New Year's Eve.
Yep, New Year's Eve day. New Year's Eve morning.
Day, whatever.
Yeah.
However you want.
I'm really glad that we are doing a morning recording, both because it's kitschy and fun for us because we don't get to do that very often, but also I think it'll be a better energy going through this this tremendous loss this last week.
Yeah,
I think it'll give us a little bit more positivity, a little bit less heaviness.
Yeah, we don't have to really. I don't have to work today, so it's kind of a chill day. We get kind of a chill vibe here.
Yeah, exactly. It's a chill cast. New Year's, what we're going to do here is we're going to go over this game, and then we're going to shed it and approach the new year, the new lights, the new mentality. That's what this is all about here. This is recording. And if you're listening to this on New Year's Day, I guess you're out of luck, but that's okay. Should we just dive right into it, Matt?
Yeah, let's get into the game. Why not?
Talk about this game? All right, let's talk about it. All right, so we lost. We lost a big one on the list of challenging games in the home stretch that we went over at the beginning of the home stretch. The early results were really positive, but we were still kind of hanging on by a thread in the wild card race. And we absolutely had to have this one against the Rams. And they tried to give it to us.
Matthew Stafford tried to give it to us. Let's be clear. The rest of the Rams really wanted to win the game, but Matthew Stafford, boy, that was something.
The story of the game was shaping up to be. I mean, if you like literally my notes, if you folded it on a graph, we were at the peak of the game was that third interception. It's just like, well, we're not going to lose this because he's playing so poorly. And yet somehow, as the 2021 Vikings do, they flipped the script on us, Matt.
Yeah, so I guess it's kind of an interesting one to me because I feel like there were a number of drives or a number of plays where you can point out which were kind of bad luck for the Vikings or that sort of thing, but we never really felt like we were in the game, to be honest with you. And that was because of our offensive performance. I really feel like the offense for the majority of the game was dismal, right? We scored 3 points in the first half, and that really kind of screwed us over there as we got closer in the game. And just to jump back, on our home stretch that we were talking about, we needed to win one of the Rams or Packers games, right? Absolutely. And I wouldn't have picked us to win either of those games straight up. And of course, now we lost the Rams game, which again, I don't think you could expect us to win it, but now we desperately need this win. And we'll get into the Packers game a little bit later.
Yeah, we'll talk about
against them. But yeah, so I think just overall from the game perspective, to me, there's three critical plays that turned into critical drives for the Rams, right? That first Rams drive where they scored a touchdown, the dropped interception by Cameron Dantzler, where Stafford throws it right to him he drops it. And then actually on that drive as well, there was the 4th and 1 conversion where he fumbles the ball and it's a quarterback sneak and they still get the first down conversion, right? How disappointing is that? And I don't think that's our defensive tackles on that play got beat and they got pushed back. And that's what happens on quarterback sneaks when you use quarterback sneaks that's exactly what happens. So the fumble is kind of neither here nor there, but it's just very strange that on a play where the quarterback fumbles, they get a positive on a 4th and 1, right?
It shouldn't work out that way, not karmically at least.
So yeah, that's frustrating. There's the punt return touchdown. Actually, going back to it, there was one block in the back. It was on CJ Ham. I thought there were 3 blocking the backs live. The one in Dan Chisena, it's on the side, and there was another one on the side as well. And Chisena kind of ran into his. So, I mean, that's a little bit more on the special teams in general than it is, I think, bad luck. And then the final one is the most frustrating one to me and the most ridiculous one is that Cooper Kupp fumble that they blew dead.
Where
they blew forward progress on it, and he's still moving forward. Like that was the fastest forward progress whistle I've ever seen.
You know, I gotta talk. Let's tamp down on forward progress for a second. You know, this is one of those rules in the game that if you really think hard about it, it totally ruins the game of football. Like, forward progress is so poorly litigated on the field. And if you really think about what the rule means, it's so dumb. Because, like, think about the way quarterbacks can run nowadays, right? Like, you can't touch the quarterback, and they know it now, and they take advantage of it. There's that kid, Pickett.
Kenny Pickett, from Pitt, who did the fake slide.
He totally, I mean, it was poor sportsmanship, I think. And like, that you're seeing that more and more. And one of the ways you see forward progress being totally bogus is those moments like with when the whistle's blown and how, whether the guy's still moving forward. It's a rule that I know why it exists. It's because they don't want people getting suplexed and stuff, where defenders are just forced to
safety.
I get it. I get why it exists. But if you really tamp down on that rule, it totally blows the game up. Like, it just doesn't make any sense. Like, why because it's so hard to litigate it. And that's a great example of that moment.
Generally, it punishes the defense. There are some instances where it helps the defense, where you've got like a pile of bodies or something, and the running back totally stopped, and then like eventually he'll like break out, but they've blown it dead. In those situations where it's like a pile of bodies, it makes sense. Where it's a player's fighting for extra yards and they're not visibly getting pushed backwards. Right. Like, if a player comes on a curl route and catches the ball and, is hit from the back and gets pushed backward 5 yards or whatever, forward progress makes sense in that instance to me.
Sure.
In the instance where Cooper Kupp is fighting for extra yards, he's almost out of bounds. I don't understand how they call forward progress there at all, to be honest with you. Like, that was way too fast of a whistle to me. And then you combine that with like the, was it Lynch or who was it that got the penalty last week on Fields where they didn't blow the whistle?
Oh, yeah.
Where he fake kneeled, and whoever it was.
Lynch. I think it was Lynch.
I think it was Blake Lynch, or not Blake, James Lynch.
One of those guys.
But, so there has to be some sort of balance between, okay, they need to blow the whistle and the players need to play that. But when it's a live play, like, and a player's fighting for extra yardage, and he was at contact for like 2 or 3 steps, and he was moving forward. Like, I've never seen a forward progress call in that situation. So that was
a rough one. There was a lot of little things like that. I mean, this was another game of missed opportunities for the Vikings, whether it's because of fateful calls like that, or an inability to seal the deal in the red zone, which was something we had a problem with in this game. Like, just lots of little, because we were winning the field position battle for the most part, due to these interceptions and due to, some pretty decent special teams play on our part as well. Stops from the defense. Like, we were really kind of in some ways controlling this game.
So I will say we were competitive in this game, but at the end of the day, the way it felt to me, it wasn't like some sort of like moral victory or like sneaky moral victory behind, because we were behind the whole game. We never had a lead. This is the first game, actually the entire season, where we haven't had a 6-point lead, I think, because that Lions game that we lost, we ended up with a 6-point lead instead of a 7-point lead. And, we never led. We were behind. We were down by multiple scores at the end of the first half because of the offensive ineptitude, right? So we talked about plays that kind of went against the defense or against the special teams, but our offense wasn't able to capitalize on anything good that the defense was doing for the majority of the game. And that was the main problem.
That's what I'm getting at. When I said we were in control, I guess what I meant by that was the opportunities were there.
Yes.
Like, we were generating opportunities. We were generating some stops, and we couldn't seal the deal. We
couldn't capitalize it at all.
Yeah.
That was the problem. Yep.
Huge problem. Another big problem. You were gushing about him before we started recording. Aaron Donald, always a problem, right?
Yeah, man. So I think Aaron Donald and really the Rams' interior defensive line. Apparently they have Ashawn Robinson. I didn't realize that, but he was 94. He made a couple of really nice plays on a drive that were drive killing, and then Greg Gaines, number 91, as well, made a couple of nice plays where our interior offensive line kind of got beat up in this game. And that hurt us a lot. We seem to have committed the past couple of weeks to the run, particularly on early downs. And when it went well, Madison broke off a couple of really nice games, and there were a couple of really well-blocked plays that had nice holes. But we ended up in these 3rd and long situations over and over.
Which, again, it's another theme of this team. 3rd and long. It just you see it pop up too often.
Yep. And that was, Aaron Donald just being superhuman sometimes. Like there's plays in the run game, and they were talking about it at the broadcast, where he's making pass rush moves, right? Where he might think it's even a passing play initially, and he beats the guard, and he did it to Oli Udoh, he did it to Ezra Cleveland. He beats the guard so quickly, and he did it to Christian Darrisaw on one play. He beats him so quickly that he's in the backfield at the running back when the running back has the ball trying to make the cut. And you just can't play offense when that's happening to you. And, that's a one-of-one player, right? Like a player who is not replicated throughout the league at all. So that's a unique difficulty of playing the Rams, but you're playing the Rams, you're playing in the NFL, So you got to find a way to mitigate those guys. And we didn't do a great job of it.
He outclassed us is what happened. Just completely. But, in all fairness, he does that to most teams he plays. But it doesn't change. But like you said, it doesn't change the fact that, you had all week to scheme for it. You should be ready for it. Like everyone on the offense should be ready for pressure up the middle on every single play.
Yeah.
If you didn't prepare for it, either as an individual or as a team, then you failed, because Aaron Donald's going to come after you.
And the answer to that problem is to probably not run the ball as often on 1st and 2nd down. Which we did a ton in this game, and it put us behind the chains. And I know, offenses like to say we run the ball to, get in manageable distance situations, but the Vikings run game was extremely boom bust in this game. Like that's not what was happening.
Let's talk about rushing in general in this game. Played a pretty big role, right? Like Matt Stafford's blowing it. Kirk Cousins, who we'll get to, piled up the yardage, but was not very effective. The running game really was the story of this game. On both sides of the ball, right? Like we had a really tough time stopping Sonny Michel, and we really missed Dalvin Cook. And as well as Madison may have played, at certain points of the game, I didn't really remember this performance being very good.
Yeah. So on our side of the ball, I really think the problem was more with the interior offensive line than it was with Alex Madison in particular. There was one play where he pretty clearly missed a hole that he should have gone up in. But from his perspective, like, I don't think there's much you can be doing different. Like I mentioned, Aaron Donald getting in the backfield on 5 or 6 plays, blows up run plays, those turn into losses, and it kind of cascades from there.
Sure. That's almost a third.
A'Shawn Robinson did it a couple times. Greg Gaines did it a time or two as well. So, you combine that together, and that's a bunch of wasted plays that you had on offense. The other thing was we kind of insisted on running the ball at long goal to go situations on both 1st and 2nd down, right? Where it's like 1st down from the 9, we run the ball. 2nd down from the 6, we run the ball. And the Rams blew those plays up. Like we didn't get yardage on those plays. And that's a big problem for the running game, when you're not able to get yardage in situations where you're hoping that the defense expects you're passing. And that's why you're running in those situations, to get a 3rd and manageable from the goal line, which when you're condensed like that, you can do the rollout stuff, you can do the boot stuff in the red zone. But at the end of the day, when this team wants to treat the running game as the engine to the offense, and the running game isn't able to get going, whether that's missing Dalvin Cook, which does play a role as well.
I mean, think about the contrast of that game he had a few weeks ago. He makes such a huge impact for this team.
I mean, at the same time, it's not like we haven't been successful with Madison in the lineup for running back this year, right? So it's really, at the end of the day, running backs can make an impact on individual plays, and they can break solid gains into long gains, and they can make losses, 0-yard gains or something like that.
And I also think that defenses are more keyed in on certain players. than others.
Yes,
more afraid.
And that does open things up. Like, I think actually part of the reason our screen game's a lot more effective without Dalvin Cook in the lineup, right? Because we hit a few screens in this game that went for significant yardage is because defenses are so keyed in on Dalvin Cook that it kind of wrecks our screen game with Dalvin Cook in the lineup. Here, there's 2 or 3 plays where Madison got 10, 20 yards on screens. And I think part of it is they're not as concerned about him. So it actually helps you out a little bit in that respect. But in the run game, without him able to make guys miss as well as Dalvin Cook can, it does hurt us a little bit when Aaron Donald's getting in the backfield. So
let's talk about the other side a little bit.
Yes.
I've watched a bit of Sony Michel over the years. This may have been one of his best NFL games, NFL level games. I can't remember seeing a whole lot of performances like this from him. I haven't watched him religiously or anything, but he seemed really on fire this week. Was it us? Was it him? What was going on there?
So a little bit of a preview of what I want to talk about in a little bit here in Tape Talk. But so I really think the Vikings got a little bit out-schemed in the running game on defense, and they got out-personneled.
Let's use that as a tease. Yes. Why don't you hang on to it? We'll get there in a minute.
So I think being out-schemed and out-personneled were a lot of the things. Like, you saw Sony Michel with wide open holes a number of times. Yeah. There were a couple times where he made nice cutbacks to make losses or minimal gains into a couple yard gains. So that was on him running. But a lot of it, I think, was just the space he had that was afforded to him by the way the Rams were blocking things up.
And we'll get to that in more detail in a second. So stick around, listeners, for some Matt Freese gold. Okay, so the other thing we wanted to go over, we're focusing a little bit on the defense here at the moment, and this is something that I didn't recognize. So I thought it was interesting that you wanted to talk about it this morning. We didn't have a very good pass rush this week.
Yes.
Okay, so what were you noticing? Why did that stand out to you?
So I think it's a general long-term, like, full season concern is we cannot win one-on-one matchups on the defensive line, with the exception of, like, Michael Pierce has had a couple nice wins. Armin Watts has been pretty solid as a pass rusher, but our edge rushers at this point in the season, right, without Everson Griffin, without Danielle Hunter, DJ Wanham and Sheldon Richardson, who's playing edge, and that's Sheldon's been playing solid on the edge, but he doesn't give you much in pass rush against an offensive tackle. Like, that's not his game. He's a power rusher, an interior rusher, and you want him on the interior. Those guys aren't able to manufacture pressure on their own by beating offensive linemen. And the Rams had Andrew Whitworth out in this game, right? Their star left tackle. They had an injury, and they put Alaric Jackson, who I think is a rookie or a second-year player, in at left tackle after the injury to their center because they shuffled the line around.
Yeah.
And we still couldn't win. DJ Wanham can't win off the edge. And the Rams do a lot with moving pockets and stuff to make it harder to edge rush. But when guys can't win one-on-one, we're solely reliant on the double A gap pressures for, to create free runners at the quarterback, essentially. And we've done a fantastic job of doing that, right? Apparently, before this week, in every single game this year, we had at least 2 sacks, which is crazy to think about, right? I didn't realize that or track that at all. But
I think I told you the other day when we had a stat a couple weeks ago that we were leading the league in sacks. I was like, what? That's not my impression of this team.
And that is a testament to how good Mike Zimmer's blitz design has been this year.
Right.
To me, because we're getting free rushers. We're getting guys like Eric Kendricks getting free sacks. We're getting defensive backs getting free sacks. Harrison Smith, I mean, he's great at it. But we're getting guys like free rushers, and we're doing it on stunts and misdirection and stuff that takes a long time to develop. The Rams in this game had a really good answer for our double A gap pressures. First of all, they were picking everything up, and they weren't allowing free rushers. That's a testament to their protection calls and their ability to execute those protection calls, because
especially given the fact that their center, who I believe makes all their calls,
he's
like a big part of the team. Yeah, right away.
So that's really nice on their part. And then they have quick answers that are solutions to the problem. When you have guys drop out, Cooper Kupp underneath is a nightmare. And that's what he was able to do when we were in those situations.
Right.
So running into a team that had answers for our double A gap pressure looks, which not really many teams really have not had answers for that this year.
Well, I mean, their answer was to go to the ground.
Right.
Sonny Michel carried the ball 27 times.
Right. And, when we did get pressure, the one thing I remember getting pressure was that first Anthony Barr interception where Armin Watts gets pressure. He wins his one-on-one matchup. Matthew Stafford has to make a panic throw, and he throws a pick right into Anthony Barr's hands. Right. So, if we had Danielle Hunter, if we had Everson Griffin, who were able to win off the edge and force quarterbacks to move in the pocket, I think this defense looks a lot different right now. It looks a lot better because we get the benefits of the Zimmer blitzes that we've been having. And it's just frustrating.
I'm shaking my head right now, Matt. I think I kind of like pushed this game down, and we're talking about it, and all these things are coming. I really, we should have won this game, man.
I will say DJ Wanham had a really nice spin move one time in this game. I can't remember how many times. DJ Wanham, Nick and I talked about this last week. DJ Wanham had 3 sacks against the Bears. He didn't win a single pass rush rep against them. It was all like unblocked or like chasing Justin Fields down were his sacks.
We're a little bit in trouble on pass rushing.
It's unfortunate that a player that we drafted in the 4th round has not developed into anything meaningful from a pass rush perspective.
Hey, we got a couple touches from Wongwu, our 5th rounder.
We did,
which was fun. I enjoyed seeing him out there. I'm not sure. It does seem like he's not really a running back. He's more like an athlete.
Not there yet.
Yeah, I do worry that he's going to long term he might not pan out. But I do like he runs a little tall, and I'd like to see him use his head, his weight a little bit more. It reminds me of David Johnson a little bit coming out of college, where Johnson really used to run really, really tall. And I think he would benefit a lot from lowering his shoulder more. But anyway, that's neither here nor there. Let's get into the stuff that people are here for. They want to hear you talk tape, Matt.
Okay.
And I want to hear it. So let's get into it. So we teased this a little bit already, but let's talk about what specifically the Rams were doing and how they were scheming their rushing attack. So they ran 27 times. So when you run 27 times, you're doing yourself a huge disservice if you're just running up the middle, running right and left. Right. You've got to do different things to sort of disguise the run if you have to run, right? The Patriots are really good at this. The 49ers are excellent at this. They'll use motions to like make it look like it might be a pass, and then they just run up the middle or whatever.
Yeah, so let's be clear, like the Rams are primarily a zone running team, and they primarily ran zone plays. I mean, we're Vikings fans, right? We're very familiar with the zone running scheme from what we've seen from the team the past few years.
Yeah, we've gone in depth on that here on the show.
So the Rams use a lot of misdirection pre-snap. They use a lot of motion pre-snap. I think that's one thing that played to their advantage. The second thing that played to their advantage was Cooper Kupp individually. And also I want to add Van Jefferson in there too, with the tight ends. So what they did a lot in run is have a tight bunch formation when they were running. So, you have your 5 offensive linemen, and then you have a tight end attached to the formation, or actually he's a step back, Cooper Kupp in the middle on the line of scrimmage. And then it was Van Jefferson was, off of his right shoulder, essentially, or left shoulder, depending on which side of the offense it was. And what that did is it forces defensive backs. And so because Cooper Kupp is a very good blocker, the Rams play a lot of 11 personnel. That's 1 running back, 1 tight end, 3 wide receivers. Defenses have to respond to that with nickel defense, right? So we have Mackenzie Alexander in the game. So
can we tamp down on this a little bit for some listeners? So this is something that I didn't really fully grasp until recent years, how substitution packages work.
Sure.
So I'd like to talk about that for a second. And like basically what Matt's describing right now is players run out onto the field and the defense makes a note of who's coming out.
Right.
And then they relay a message back to their sideline. This is who's on the field or whatever. everybody's paying attention to it. And you respond to that by sending out personnel that matches up, that you've determined matches up with the personnel that's on the field.
Right. And you have a plan based on the numbers of the players. Like, if this guy's in the game, we want to have this in the game. And it situationally depends a little bit. Like, third and short, you're probably going to go with heavier players. But yeah, exactly.
Right. So what they essentially do with this formation is they force the defense to respond with a light package, a package of cornerbacks and so forth.
So now you're involving the defensive backs in the run fit, and you're involved, like, usually a defensive back is like edge contained in the run fit, where they are, you don't want the running back to get outside of you, and you're against a wide receiver. All you got to do is force them to cut back inside. Now it's Mackenzie Alexander has to come up and actually fill a gap in the run game. And the Rams ran to that bunch a ton. They ran to that a lot. And another thing they like to do is use misdirection with a motion of a receiver coming across. And usually linebackers step over a gap to respond to that. And you've got the threat of jet motion, that sort of thing. So when they did that away from the bunch, now you've got the defensive line trying to slant towards that motion. And you've got essentially what it allowed them to do is get an offensive lineman free to the second level to block Eric Kendricks on like every one of their big runs. And that's problematic for the Vikings. Eric Kendricks had a very poor PFF grade in this game. And I don't want to say he played well because he got blocked out of a number of plays. But we've talked about it before. Getting blocked by offensive linemen is not Eric Kendricks' game. Right? He's better when he's kept clean and is able to read the defense. Like
fly around.
Fly around. He's in the 230s. Anthony Barr can take on offensive line blocks. He's like 250 pounds, right? Dante Hightower and the Patriots can take on offensive lineman blocks.
Fred Warner.
That's not. Fred Warner can't really take on offensive line.
No, you disagree. Okay.
He's more in the Kendricks mold.
Okay.
Darius Leonard. Those guys need to have the space to roam free, and when they don't get that space, it's problematic. The Rams were able to get a offensive lineman climbing to the second level without having to double team immediately to Eric Kendricks, and that's a big part of the problem. They used a lot of line back motion, which is a tight end coming across and lead blocking. That's kind of like split zone as well, where you're flowing one way, so you get the defensive line flowing one way. Outside zone, right? You flow in one direction and the running back cuts back. That's where a lot of Michel's big runs came. On the defensive side of the ball, the Vikings, if you have two high safeties, right? You have both safeties deep, you're down a man in the box. Okay, so to account for that, the Vikings a lot of times use what's called a gap and a half technique with their defensive tackles. And that worked on a few plays.
What does that mean?
On defense, the spaces between the offensive linemen, so between the center and the guard, are called gaps. So between the center and the guard is A gap, between the guard and the tackle is the B gap, and a C, D as it goes further out. What the Vikings are a one gap defense, which means against the run, you have a player playing a single gap. So the nose tackle Michael Pierce will be playing the right A gap between the right guard and the center or something like that, right? So his responsibility is to hold that gap, but he's peeking in the backfield if the running back cuts back in gap and a half. So he is holding his A gap and is peeking in the backfield. If the running back cuts back, he's got to pull the offensive lineman the other direction and try to get there. When they were running against our defensive tackles were doing a good job. The problem was they were watching the defensive tackles and not making them the point of attack of the play. And that's where Cooper Kupp being a good blocker comes in, because you had tight ends blocking DJ Wanham into oblivion. Or watching him down into oblivion, right? So you're not blocking DJ Wanham with the offensive lineman. He was a big problem in this game, in my opinion. You had Cooper Kupp being able to block safeties, like able to block like Harrison Smith, able to block Xavier Woods out of the play, and an offensive lineman being able to climb to the second level and block Eric Kendricks. And now all of a sudden you have a wide open hole.
Right.
And that's where it was problematic. They didn't have as much success running to Sheldon Richardson's side, because it turns out you can't block Sheldon Richardson with the tight end as you can block DJ Wanham as a tight end. So to me, the primary culprit in run defense for the Vikings was DJ Wanham. And that's just, and it was part good design because they were attacking players where they're weakest, right? Where you're blocking Kendricks with offensive linemen, you're finding ways to do that. That's a win for the offense, and that's an issue for the defense. On the flip side, in the pass game, I will say the Vikings, I thought, did a really good job in the pass game. And maybe this is part of the trade-off too, where they're focused on stopping the bootlegs and stopping getting beat deep on play action. We did a really good job in that scenario, preventing the Rams from doing everything. That's part of why Matthew Stafford was so bad in this game.
This is my question to you is, those interceptions, the poor performance, what was, you would say was a product of the way we were calling the game and not necessarily a product of
so
him just playing
it's
poorly?
definitely part Matthew Stafford trying to do way too much, but there wasn't a lot there downfield.
Right.
When there was stuff there, he found it, right? But it was him forcing balls into situations when it wasn't there. So I think there was a little bit of a trade-off for us of, not caring about the run game, or like, the famous Bills Giants Super Bowl where Bill Belichick is like, we want Thurman Thomas to run for 100 yards because that means they're not beating us in the passing game, right? I think there was an element of that to it, but when they were so consistently successful in the run game, and we've talked about this in the past, just think of the Saints game last year. There's a point where when your opponent is so successful in the run game that it doesn't matter if they can pass or not, because you're not stopping them, period.
Right.
So, and we went over to that in this game, right? Yeah. We crossed the line over into that.
Totally
so that
agreed.
Was the problem.
Totally agreed. Now there's another big problem. And
yes.
we have danced around this all season, and it's been up and down. Kirk Cousins was a big problem in this game.
I agree with that.
So let's set the stage. Yeah. So let's set the stage a little bit. And this is, this past week has been very entertaining for me to see you go full heel on Kirk Cousins, because I've been waiting for the day, man. I've been waiting for the day. So it's been very fun for me. But let's set the stage a little bit. This is yet another game. This is a classic Kirk Cousins game where you look at the stat line, you see he threw for over 300 yards. Ratio's not great. Touchdown, interception. This must not have been his fault. We scored 30 points. I scored 23 points. Like this must be on the defense. It feels like for 3 years, we have been always searching for culprits elsewhere. And I think this week the spell is broken. So talk to me a little bit about what happened for you. Why you're like,
it's the same. Like, I think, and you like to talk about this a little bit, but like Kirk's play this year up until this point has been a little bit, it's been deceptive, right? It's been trying to tell us he's not who he's always been. And it turns out he actually is who he's always been as a quarterback.
Same motherfucker he's always been.
So he's just the same guy. And the issue is in this game, Kirk, I feel like generally is very good when he has a plan and he understands the plan, and he's good pre-snap. So there was the touchdown to KJ Osborne late in the game. The Rams have a free rusher on that play, but Kirk is able to identify that pre-snap. He knows he's got man coverage with KJ Osborne. He knows he wants to get the ball there. Think back to the Seattle game on that critical third down where he made the same conversion to KJ Osborne. He is able to identify that pre-snap, maybe make a slight confirmation post-snap, but everything went as he planned, and he's able to deliver the ball accurately in the correct location. His problem becomes when things aren't right? When things are slightly off, he gets flustered, and I think that becomes a mistake. And like, this is something I do personally. When you drop something or like you do something like that, maybe you kick it right away because you got flustered, and then like now it's even more embarrassing because you just made another stupid mistake. Like, you compounded your mistakes.
The word you're looking for is clumsy.
Yes. And he plays quarterback a little bit that way. The past 2 weeks, so we talked about, I think it was the Lions game and the Steelers game, where Kirk was putting the ball at risk a little bit more. And he didn't have good stat lines in those games. But Nick and I talked about how it was encouraging because he was pushing the ball downfield. He was making those aggressive throws. Right. I think the last 2 weeks, he's gone in the opposite direction now. And that's where the problem is, to me, is you wanted to see him continue to do that, and eventually you'd have success doing those things. and he's just not there right now. The biggest thing to me is first play of the game last week. It's a zone bootleg, right? We've run this a million times with Kirk Cousins, 2019, 2020, we ran this a ton. We haven't run it as much this year. Teams have been doing a really good job of it, but we've been running it a lot more recently, and we've had a lot of success with it kind of recently. Mm-hmm. Justin Jefferson is wide open on this bootleg. Cannot miss him on this bootleg. He's wide open. Kirk decides to pull the ball, runs it, gets 8 yards. He has space. He gets 8 yards, but it should have been a 20-yard gain. In this game, Kirk has Adam Thielen, and he doesn't have as much space in this one, so I don't quite blame him. But he runs for 6 yards. It's a pattern of he has opportunities to throw the ball down the field and be aggressive on these bootlegs. And for some reason, the timing's not there. There was a play that Jalen Ramsey broke up that was thrown to Justin Jefferson. Jefferson was open on the over.
What's so frustrating about those runs? That you're describing it. That's the other thing is he drives you nuts sometimes when he doesn't run, and he could. And and Jefferson's open on the over for so long. Kirk takes an extra hitch, throws the ball behind him. Jalen Ramsey's able to catch up and break up the play. So it's consistent where our timing hasn't been right on these plays. And I don't care if we haven't practiced it much this year. You've been doing this for 3 freaking years, Kirk Cousins. Your timing should be down on this. And that's where I feel like the issue lies, is when everything's not perfect for him, it becomes this compounding issue. The other issue I have is everybody knows the check down to a very covered Alex Madison on the goal line on 3rd down, which was just absurd. There's a linebacker literally right there. Kirk, you cannot throw that ball to Alex Madison. That is not getting you anywhere. That's not doing anything for you. Come off of that. Hold it a half second longer to go to Justin Jefferson. And later he says he's fine with taking that check down. That's where his reads took him on the play. And that's the problem, is he's not able, and I thought he was doing this early in the year. I kind of did. He's not able to consistently think outside the box in a way that benefits the team. And that's the problem. What you just said is the perfect lead in to my new nickname for Kirk Cousins. For years I called him 50-50 because it was, half the game's good, half the game's bad. My new thing for Kirk, and I'm hoping I only have to say this joke for a few more months, is he is the definition of the QB con artist. Okay? You read his stat line, you watch some of his highlights, and you're not a fan of this team, you just get the sense that he's this great quarterback. His PFF ratings are high. He's top 10. He's one of the best all time in this category, best all time in that category, etc. But the experience of being quarterbacked or having your team quarterbacked by this guy, and the experience of these particular moments, these games where you know that he's the one failing you, but you can't really grasp exactly why. And you're stuck in this perpetual reality where I have to believe this guy's good, right? I have to, because all these signifiers are telling me he's good, but he's not. And he's ripping us off literally from our salary cap. He's literally draining our bank accounts as a team. He is a con artist. So he is a leech. He gets onto your team and he just sucks you dry. And the whole time you're wondering, why am I losing blood? And the reality is you have a leech on your back and you just don't realize it. So it's time for us to get out a salt shaker, toss that shit on our back, get this guy out of this team, man. Get rid of him. Yeah, it's over. So it's not working. It's never worked.
On Kirk, I do want to be clear on my end. I don't think Kirk is a bad quarterback, right?
Matt's giving you the Greg's opinions do not necessarily reflect the opinions of Kindred Skulls.
Of Kindred Skulls as a group, yeah. Here we are.
I agree.
The argument is not that he's a bad quarterback. In fact, he's probably, if you look at quarterbacks around the league, there aren't a whole lot of quarterbacks that are better than Kirk Cousins. I mean, he's probably in the 10 to 15 range in terms of quarterbacks. And on the whole, generally, he processes things very well and things go on time. And I talked about it. It's when things get slightly off where he's not able to make the adjustments. Or if it's something that he doesn't recognize pre-snap and is able to confirm post-snap, that he's not able to make the adjustments for it. And when you're paying a guy the amount of money that we're paying him, and when we haven't hit on draft picks for like 5 years in a row, so we don't have low-cost players who are significant contributors to the team outside of literally Justin Jefferson, like that's it, guys. Maybe Cameron Dantzler, if you count that. Then with our roster construction, we can't win because we don't have the talent on the roster, because we can't pay veterans to fill in the gaps, or the veterans we are paying to fill in the gaps. Like, we don't have guys who have filled it out otherwise. Like, we don't get pass rush.
This is what con artists do, Matt. They leave you scratching your head. Why are all my accounts empty? Why am I losing? It's because you've been duped. You have been duped.
It's fool's gold because you have a good quarterback who's not good enough to elevate the rest of the roster.
That's what con artists are. They look the part, they play the part right up until you realize they're a con artist and you kick them to the curb. But by then it's too late. You've already lost years of your life and your money. And that's what they are. And I feel like, all kidding aside, I really do feel like this was a humongous mistake for the franchise, and we're reaping the rewards of that, unfortunately. I mean, he was not the guy to go all in on. Just the reality.
I don't really blame the decision-making process, especially initially, because we went from Case Keenum,
right,
who was like not good at quarterback, to supposedly a significantly better quarterback, but it hasn't improved the team success because the rest of the pieces of the team around that have deteriorated over time, and we haven't been able to replenish that because we're spending a lot of money and we're not hitting on draft picks. So that's overall where the issue lies. And Kirk Cousins is a part of that reason.
He's the linchpin.
He's the linchpin
of a larger set of issues.
He's kind of the first domino that knocks over all the other dominoes.
Yep.
Right.
Yep. I'm taking the muzzle off, here on Kindred Skulls for the first time, really. So I want everyone to appreciate that I have a much broader view of the team than this. I'm not blaming all of our issues on Kirk Cousins, but I think that his the role that he plays on this team as quarterback, the amount of money he makes, the frank reality is that we have to rely on that person to elevate us. And if he can't, which he's proven he can't year after year, then he is not worth the price, and he has never been worth the price. We have nothing to show for it. We have a first-round exit.
Yep.
That's it.
Yeah.
Very disappointing. Definitely a spell-breaking game. And now we have possibly an even bigger game, an even tougher game. No, definitely an even tougher game. We're going into Lambeau Field on Sunday night.
Yep.
To play the Packers on Sunday Night Football.
Sunday Night Football.
For all the world to see.
The frozen tundra.
We're expecting temperature. I mean, the deck is stacked against us. Nobody has a good taste in their mouth after this game. This is a dig deep moment for this squad. We're going to learn exactly what they have in this game, because this is a playoff game for us, straight up. If you want to see what version of the Minnesota Vikings we were potentially going to send to the playoffs, this is what you're going to, this is the game.
Yep.
Playing away games, because that's what we would have been playing in tough environments against the top teams in this country. Let's see how we go against these Packers. So let's talk about them a little bit. Aaron Rodgers, defying all reason, total bounce back season, went from possibly retiring to now making a case for MVP on a stacked.
I mean, let's be clear. Squad. Aaron Rodgers was literally the MVP last year, so it's not like he created all of the drama for himself.
Oh yeah, no.
He very clearly likes the drama.
Let me be very clear.
Aaron Rodgers this year.
There ain't no love for that son of a bitch on this podcast. Okay, we could get into him and his many annoyances, but I'm just strictly speaking on the the objective facts. He's been spectacular this year as a quarterback. There's no denying that. Still person I would never enjoy meeting, I don't think, but maybe I would, I don't know. But he's definitely playing very, very well this year. They've seemed to have discovered some talents that they've developed over the years at receiver. Some of the younger guys are stepping up. They still have Devontae Adams. They still have Aaron Jones. They have this new back in AJ Dillon. I mean, they're stacked. They're stacked on offense.
Yep.
They're fairly effective defensively. Do you have any anything you've noticed about the Packers defense this year, either from the game we've already played or, I've kind of avoided them this year because I always hate watching a good Packers team. And just
so I think the Packers defense is relatively the same story that we've seen the past few years. The thing with our game against them was Jair Alexander was out, and let me check Jair Alexander's status right now because I don't know if he's playing or not. So it sounds like Jair Alexander is going to return this week. He was activated off of injured reserve 2 days ago. So that's a problem for the Vikings because he's really freaking good. Now, maybe after coming back from an injury, he's not fully up to game speed yet, but I think one of the things that you could exploit on the Packers previously, and we've been able to exploit him for like 3 years, is Kevin King because he's awful. And, we scored 37 points in our first matchup against the Packers. Sure. It's not like we weren't successful on offense. We were very successful on offense.
They're not top 10 in any defensive category. It's not like we're facing some stifling defense here, but they do some things very well. I think they get after the quarterback pretty well. They get
after the quarterback well. They've traditionally done a very good job against our zone boot game. I would not expect us to run zone bootlegs and that sort of thing, significantly in this game. So I just looked up. They're 20th and 21st in defensive DVOA, 31st in rush defense DVOA. So very bad against the run. And they are 14th in pass defense DVOA. So they're a below average defense in general. Now, again, Jair Alexander makes a huge difference to their pass defense because they have a shutdown corner. Eric Stokes has been playing well, although we beat up on him a little bit too in our game against them. Right. The problem on our end is we only have one wide receiver who can win. On a consistent basis, one-on-one, because Adam Thielen's out for the rest of the season. Yep. We didn't mention that, but he got ankle surgery, so he's on IR.
It's just one of those pieces of news that just kind of like wash over you in a year like this.
You're kind of despairing already, right? Yeah. So to be clear, just to go back to the playoff picture, the Vikings need to win this game, and we need to beat the Bears to have a hope.
Oh, absolutely.
I think technically, even if we're both 9-8, the Saints have a tiebreaker over it, so we would need the Saints to lose one as well. The Eagles also, are a game up on us, so we would need them to lose a game. So we need to win both of these games, and we need a little bit of help from both the Saints and the Eagles to make the playoffs.
Which just reiterates how huge that loss was against the Rams and why it's so disappointing. It's not just a loss; it's a loss that literally you took something you had in your control and you put yourself in the worst possible position.
Sure.
Because now we have to win the games.
And now you turn around, looking up beforehand, okay, we need to win one of the Packers or Rams games. Now we need to win the Packers game, right? So now you're pressing and your backs are against the wall, which could show fight in this team. We've done it in the past.
Well, that's what I was teasing, at the beginning. It's like this will be our playoff performance. If we will know what does a playoff version of this team look like. Because if these guys don't dig deep and win this game, then they didn't deserve to be in the playoffs in the first place.
Yep. And if you remember back to the previous Packers game, Kenny Clark destroyed Mason Cole at center. If you remember back to Packers games in years past, Kenny Clark has destroyed Garrett Bradbury at center. So I don't really expect that to change. But given the weaknesses on the Packers team, I think we can execute around that on offense. I'm not overly concerned about our offense. Obviously, missing Adam Thielen is big. We'll need KJ Osborne to step up and maybe D.D. Westbrook or somebody to make a couple nice plays. But we'll probably just run more 2 tight end sets or that sort of thing.
Well, the other issue is, the weather being the way it is, that ball is going to feel like a block of ice, and I think teams have adapted really well to weather stuff.
Sure.
It's much different than it was when I was a kid. A snow game actually used to mean something. I don't think it really means as much as it used to, but the reality is I don't care how tough these guys are. When the weather gets to that level of cold that level of cold. No human being is built to withstand that comfortably. So I think there's going to be some drop balls. There's going to be some it's going to look a little funky, I think.
And on offense, I think the key for us against the Packers the past few years, because the number one thing the Packers have tried to do against us is take away the boot action, which I expect they will continue to do in this game, even given the weather. The key for us against the Packers has been the guy whose jersey you're wearing right now, number 33, because if you look I looked this up yesterday, over the past 4 games against the Packers, Dalvin Cook has 580 scrimmage yards and 8 touchdowns. So he's been dominant in those games, and it's because they are selling out against the bootlegs that our zone running game works against them.
Right.
Now I just mentioned they're 31st in the NFL in rush defense DVOA. So if we're able to get the run game going, we should have it all game because of the way they play. Now maybe because of the weather, they're going to be more likely, and of who they're playing, right? We love to run the ball. They're going to be more likely to sell out against the run, and it doesn't work out that way. But given how they've played us in the past, I think we've got a decent chance of that happening. The key on the flip side would be shutting down the Packers offense, which is a Death Star. So
it is a Death Star. And, knowing everything we know the team through and through at this point. But let's be frank, these guys match up against us extremely well.
Right.
There's no denying it. Like, they can go deep. They can run the ball with 2 great running backs. They have the ability to bully us.
Yes.
And we're going to have to score points.
Given that the weather's clear and I think the weather's going to be clear. Like, it's not going to be snowing or anything.
Right.
There wouldn't be adverse weather conditions for Aaron Rodgers throwing the football, right? It's just cold, which I guess that's harder to throw the football. But
I think Packers, probably harder to throw deep, but you can still do things with it.
We talked about it, and it kind of played out in the Packers game, right? Where Marquez Valdes-Scantling crushed us. I mean, he had was it one, and then Lazard also had like a 75-yard touchdown or something, right? That was Lazard, I think. But
I don't think they had Adams in that game, did they?
Adams had 2 touchdowns in that game, I think. But it was
it out,
but they weren't big touchdowns, and he didn't have a massive 10 catches for 130 yards and 2 touchdowns game. It was 5 catches for 50 something yards, but also 2 touchdowns. But the problem with the Packers is you have to dedicate resources to stopping Devontae Adams because he's so good, right? And then their weapons outside of that in Valdes-Scantling and Lazard are built to complement that because, part is it ties into what the Packers do in the run game because they're good blockers, but also the speed that they have stresses the defense when you have to cover those guys one-on-one. Because you have to devote resources to Devontae Adams. So they end up being covered one-on-one. And then you get things like Xavier Woods getting beat deep by Allen Lazard because he's put in a really tough position. So I think that is something to watch out for once again on defense, where it just makes it really stressful, where they might not be individually great receivers, right? But they're good at a couple things. And the Packers utilize those things very well. And that's something that Matt LaFleur has really brought to them. On top of Aaron Rodgers being able to put the ball literally wherever he wants at any point in time, off of any platform or
anywhere.
And being really smart. So,
man.
Their run game is very good. The weakness of their team this year has been the offensive line. I don't think David Bakhtiari is even back yet. That was something that we talked about potentially happening around our game, and I think he's still out, and he's been out for the season. So there is a bit of a weakness.
Maybe we can break Aaron Rodgers' collarbone again or something.
But
early in the game, just give ourselves a level playing field.
But the unfortunate thing there is, like I talked about earlier, we haven't been able to generate pass rush without blitzing. So
I was making a joke, Matt.
I know.
This is going to be a troublesome game, and we absolutely have to win it. Let's wrap up this part of the pod a little bit. Is there any final thoughts you have about the Packers game, or anything that you wanted to mention about the Rams, state of the Vikings? We didn't talk about.
If you want my prediction for the next 2 weeks, we're going to beat the Packers, and then we're going to lose to the Bears because that's how the Vikings work. So enjoy, everybody.
I think you're more confident about this Packers game than I am, but
Oh no, I'm not confident about the Vikings' ability to beat the Packers. I'm confident about the Vikings' ability to hurt their fans in the worst way possible.
In the worst way possible.
That's what I'm confident in.
Right. It'll be like we play an incredible game against the Packers, and then the following day, Kirk Cousins gets a COVID test. And then positive COVID test. And then we have to start Kellen Mond against the Bears.
Yep.
And then, it's just a disaster. Yeah. I don't know, man. This might be the this might be for all the marbles here. Do we want to do 15 seconds of fantasy? I'm just going to ask you straight up. Do you care this week?
Yeah, let's
all right, fine. For the first time in the entire series of pods, I'm not interested in doing this week. But let's go ahead. Listen, Matt and I and Nick, who's not with us today, we miss him, are in a fantasy league together. We most weeks love to talk about our fantasy teams, but we know that our listeners don't want to hear it. So every week we dedicate 15 seconds of the show to talking about fantasy football. Each of us gets 5 seconds. This week, we're going to keep it to, we'll say about 7 seconds apiece. All right, Matt? So go ahead. Your 7 seconds start now, sir.
So all three of us are eliminated. It's kind of funny that Nick was the best team in the league all year and got eliminated, but I just want to congratulate Tripp and Brownie on their success.
You're done. I don't have much to say. I didn't make it as far as I wanted to this year, but it was a good year. So, okay. Let's wrap it up, man. Where can people find you on Twitter? Your handle, if you're watching us on YouTube, Matt's handle is right underneath his name.
Yeah, on Twitter @FriesFootball.
@FriesFootball. You can find me on Twitter @You've Been Gregged with 3 G's and no E at the end there. You can also find me on Instagram. I usually post stuff on Instagram. Nick Olson, who's not with us this week, is available on Twitter @NickOlsonNFL. You can find us as a collective @Kindred Skulls on Twitter. We're available on iTunes, Spotify, wherever you get your podcasts. And if you'd like to watch the video version of the show, just go to YouTube and search for Kindred Skulls. Matt, it's been a joy and a pleasure this week. Obviously things aren't going the way that we want with the team, but it's always good to see your face.
It is what it is. It's fun to talk about. You need an outlet somewhere. So
I'm not sure fun is the word that I would use, but it's a way to pass the time this year.
It's fan therapy, that's for sure.
Yeah, exactly. All right, man. I'm gonna give you a digital hug.
All right.
You don't have to accept it.
Yeah, sure.
I know. No, it's
bring it in.
We just made it weird. All right.
Yeah.
Have a good
New Year's.
Happy New Year's. Skol Vikings.
Wouldn't do us any harm. Oh,
and we're back. So we had we literally hit stop recording. We gave each other digital hugs. We were commiserating about the Packer game and all the ways that the 2021 Minnesota Vikings could break our hearts in classic Vikings fashion. And literally, as soon as we stop recording, Matt sends me a message that we have to begin recording immediately again.
Yeah. So,
and why is that, Matt?
So a little bit of context here. I close the Zoom window. I have Twitter right behind it. I go to Twitter, tweet from Darren Wolfson. Key Vikings player has tested positive for COVID. 2 minutes later, he had to reply to the thread. It's Kirk Cousins because I guess Pelissero and ESPN reported it in the meantime. So, he knew it was Kirk, but he waited for it to be confirmed by those guys first. And it's just like, oh my goodness, I can't believe we talked about this. I literally, this entirely changes the game.
Our listeners will be listening to me make a joke about this about 6 minutes ago.
Yeah.
Okay. Like literally this is, and Matt, we've agreed, and I think rightfully so. We're not going to go political on this show, but we talked at length at the beginning of the year about how potentially disastrous this situation could be. You now have a game that we don't need to go over the stakes again. Everybody understands how big this game is. We're now without our starting quarterback for this game.
Yeah. And we talked a little bit about how Kirk Cousins maybe isn't a long-term solution or whatever for the Vikings, or he's not putting you over the top. He's certainly a heck of a lot better than who? Kellen Mond? Is Sean Mannion still out because he was symptomatic when he
look, Sean Mannion
last Saturday, or was out for the game Sunday. So
I call him the onion because that's what I think of him as. He's an onion as a quarterback. Kellen Mond, I really like his potential long term. You know that. I'm a big Kellen Mond. I'm intrigued by Kellen Mond, but it's certainly not. This is not the position I would ever want him.
Sean Mannion for is game still on reserve COVID-19.
Oh my God,
so he so bad. He is most likely out for this game. He is. They changed the protocol for the 5-day window, but we're past that 5-day window if he's asymptomatic, which means he would be symptomatic and is out for the football game, which means it's either Kellen Mond or Kyle Sloter, who's bad.
You just have to laugh. You just have to laugh. I mean,
it's Kellen Mond or Kyle Sloter.
This the biggest is the game scenario. Of the season,
period.
This is the scenario. This is exactly the worst possible timing for this. And we all said it could happen. And I still can't believe it.
I can't believe we got done recording talking about how important this game is. And as soon as we're done, Kirk Cousins is out with COVID. It's absurd. It's awful. The timing is terrible. And it's the death knell for the Vikings football season. Like, I can't see a way that we win this football game.
No, there's no chance.
Without Kirk Cousins a quarterback.
I mean, as much as we just bagged on him, the reality is he's our starting quarterback. And
the reality is he's a fringe top 10 quarterback. And now we're going with a guy who was a 3rd-round draft pick who would potentially make his first start, or Kyle Sloter again. Like, it's who just got added to the team, who has no knowledge of this coaching staff, who has no knowledge of this offensive coaching staff, right? So it's not like, he was on our preseason roster, when we had John DiFilippo or Norv Turner or Pat Shurmur as our offensive coordinator. Like, we don't have the continuity with him.
It's got to be Mond. We have to start Mond.
It's got to be Mond.
There's no choice.
It's got to be Mond. And
but the bottom line is, like, I expect nothing from him, nor should anyone expect anything from him in this game.
No.
I mean, there's no reason to expect anything from him.
No, this is the exact Jordan Love against the Chiefs situation, right, that the Packers went through earlier this year. It's the same thing, except he's not a 1st-round draft pick who you would expect to have developed over the course of a full season. He's a 3rd-round draft pick with a lot of potential that maybe you hope does something, but you don't have any expectation. You shouldn't have expectations with a 3rd-round draft pick. Now we have to have that guy at quarterback.
As the resident Mond guy, this is not how I wanted him introduced to the world.
No,
this is bad. This is really, really bad.
Also,
this is the season. I mean, I don't really see
today is Friday the 31st. I don't know what the turnaround time is. If he reported,
you could very easily miss
the Wolfson thread said Kirk self-reported symptoms, got tested positive. So if that means he tested probably yesterday, we have Friday, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. The 10th day is Sunday the 9th. So depending on the timing of all of this, he might also be out for the Bears game.
He might be out for the Bears game.
10 days if you're symptomatic and unvaccinated.
It might be out for the Bears game. And even if he isn't, he will not have had contact with the team for an entire week.
Yes.
This is the worst possible timing for this. It's laughable and infuriating that it's happening this way. I mean, it's we do all this doom saying and stuff about it earlier in the year. My mind is going in circles right now. I'm having a hard time processing it. We certainly could not end the show without addressing that, because it pretty much changes the complexion of the entire recording we just made.
Absolutely.
But we wanted our listeners to know that we were aware of it happening, and this is essentially a live broadcast of the pod this week. So
I guess the final thing I will say on this is everybody who is like, why are people making a big deal out of this preseason when he was out for 5 days? This is why people were making a big deal out of it.
This is why.
This exactly right here is
it
why.
Had nothing to do with politics.
Everybody was talking about that.
It was, if he got sick at the exact wrong moment in our season, it could potentially sink us from the playoff picture. And that is literally what's going to be playing out.
And that just happened. So here we are.
Trade Kirk Cousins. # trade Kirk Cousins. All right, guys. I guess this is a much bigger downer note.
Sorry for your terrible addendum to the end of the podcast.
Let's do digital fist bumps because I don't think this is what we need. This is the energy we need.
Yeah.
All right. Well, good to see you again, Matt. Happy New Year's, everyone. Try to be positive and happy.
Negative and happy, actually.
Yeah, negative and happy. Stay safe out there, folks.
Another first round corner wouldn't
it.
do us any harm. Oh, another first round corner wouldn't do us any harm. Oh, another first round corner wouldn't do us any harm. And we'll all cheer on behind, and we'll score.